Hello, my name is Dr. Nachi Sinha, and those who know me call me Nachi. You can too. Today we're here to talk about the narratives of life. Not about who we are or what we do, but about why we do what we do, which allows us to look deeper and find answers to questions that perhaps might even confuse us about ourselves. It's not about right or wrong, good or bad. It's just about a chat, figuring out who we are and why we do what we do. Joining me today is a colleague of mine from England, a psychiatrist colleague, Dr. Laxmikanth Bangaru. Dr. Bangaru, you're now live.
Glad to see you a long time, Dr. Sinha.
Welcome to Sitting with Sinha, of course. And I was just telling the audience that those who know me call me Nachi, so please, you know me, you can call me Nachi.
Nachi, yes.
Like you normally do. So, Dr. Bangaru, as you know, that you and I had briefly talked about the idea around what this is supposed to be, right? I mean, about looking into our lives and figuring out not necessarily what we are or how or success, failure, good, bad, and all that stuff, but more about looking deeper, understanding why we do what we do, and sort of looking at the whys of life, if you please. And and it's in this process that you kindly agreed to be a guest on this. And would you like to start by telling us a bit briefly about your where you are, how your life is, and so on, and a bit of background?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to have a chat with you, Nachi, after a very long time. So yeah, I'm back in London, back with the family. So things are pretty much getting slightly better. If you're looking at the COVID scenario and everything, so things are getting back to a little bit normalcy here. So yeah, on the whole, things are a bit upbeat and looking forward to life ahead.
So for those who are paying attention, of course, you said back with the family. Now, what exactly does back mean? I mean, to be back, you have to have been away.
I know it could have any different connotations, but in a good way. Yeah. So 2019, I took sabbatical from my job to work in Canada because I always had this, the fascination in working in a different healthcare setup in a different country, ideally. So yeah, the options were Australia and Canada, but Canada I preferred much more better because I had very good view about Canada, about the people there, and I pretty much like the cold weather compared to hot and humid conditions. So yeah, Canada was the go-to place for me, and I was quite fortunate that everything fell into place. And I was in Canada 2019, sometime around October, November. And yeah, I worked there in a place called Moncton. It was beautiful, you know. And then like the whole COVID thing hit, and I couldn't, I couldn't travel to England. My family was here; they couldn't travel there. So after a very long time, finally last year, December, things started getting a bit better. Although things were getting a bit heated up with the new Omicron. So yeah, that's when I decided to go back because 2 years was a pretty long time. I mean, it
Right.
sounds
So we kind of lost you a bit there when you. Excuse me. We kind of lost you a bit when you said after a very long time of about, and then the screen froze for a second. So could you just repeat for the viewers that how long were you in Canada for before you could go and visit your family?
I was in Canada for 2 years, roughly around 2 years, more
Right.
than 2 years before moving back to England last year in December.
Right. So, I mean, for the benefit of the viewers, of course, and as a disclaimer, when you say you're in Canada, you're actually working uh, as a colleague of ours here in Moncton in the same department, and so and I mean, I must say that you are being sorely missed, as you know already, and not just by the people who you saw in your practice, but also by your colleagues and both psychiatrists and the staff members. So it was, and I, you describe how how you liked it very much, and how a decision had to be made. So, if I understand correctly, I mean, you came when you came here. The plan was for the family, of course. I mean, in this case, your wife and your son to join you here, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, it's quite a bit for a family to go through together, isn't it? I mean, I mean, how did how did everybody kind of make sense of? I mean, for all that, and it's like COVID, of course, was a big chaos on everybody's lives. I mean, and forget about the medical side of it. I mean, our personal lives as well. But then you were battling your own um, battle. I mean, your family was actually right.
I mean that's true, Nachi. Like the initial plan when I moved there, my son was 11, 12. So, that was the age wherein it's not that difficult for them to move to a new area, adapt to the new system. And my wife is also a doctor. So the initial plan was first I will go there, have a look, work, look at the place where I'm working, look at the city, look at the schools, and then the plan was for them to come on holidays, Easter holidays, sometime in April, then summer holidays, because Canada is beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful, and New Brunswick especially is a very beautiful province. There, throughout the year, there's so much to do because I did my research online before moving there. So yeah, the plans were there, but I think, yeah, November I went in, and sometime around February, I think I got a break for a week. Then I came to England, and hey ho, come March, this whole COVID thing, it shut down. And even to this day, I mean, I was sorely missing my family, and they couldn't visit whole two
Yeah.
years. I mean, when we talk about COVID, yeah, it's a general this thing, but I think each and every one of us, we had our own sacrifices, we have our own difficulties that we have to bear. And for me, I think, it's neither could I go to see my family in England, neither could they come. And right now, I think you pretty much know, Nachi, with vaccination for 12 to 18-year olds, I think that has become a big stumbling block. There has been no unanimity. I mean, Canada, United States, anyone about 12, they were giving double vaccine boosters and everything. But England still, I think recently they changed the rule, like recently,
Hmm.
that they're giving the second dose now. So, that was another big obstacle. Obviously, when I was there in Canada, I discussed with my colleagues and everything. Look, everyone was quite supportive to me, quite sympathetic towards the situation I was in. And they were proposing, like, look, why don't you invite your family? Why can't they stay here? Because I think England was one of the worst hit countries, during the initial Delta variant and then the Omicron variant. I think the England was one of the most affected countries. So
Yeah.
everyone was advising me, look, why don't you get your family to Canada? Why can't at least you don't need to be worried about so much. But these were the technicalities. Like Canada wouldn't have allowed anyone above the age of 12 with just
Well,
one single dose of COVID.
yeah. I mean, if I remember correctly, for a long time, I mean, travel wasn't even possible, right? I mean, so it wasn't just a question I mean, why a family can join. I mean, it's also a question of, I mean, any one of us who's changed countries, much less jobs, and we know how much of a total effort and what a big change that is. So it's I mean, even without COVID, it was a big thing, right? For
Absolutely,
right,
absolutely. Like if I
and then with
remember
that,
it correctly, I think the whole of 2020 was like, there were no flights basically. All international flights were stopped and everything. Things started moving up a bit in 2021 last year, but then these were the additional hurdles or obstacles that I would say, like, because yeah,
so I mean, in that period that you were here in Canada, of course. Um, if one was to ask anybody who knew you while you were here, the one thing they'll say about you is that you have a very strong work ethic. You actually like what you do, and so um, a lot of your time was related to work, right? I mean, regarding the practice of psychiatry, of course. And how did you cope? I mean, if I may ask, in that realization that essentially in a strange sort of way because of COVID. I mean, you were trapped here, and your family was trapped there. And as a responsible person, I mean, you couldn't even sort of, you know, throw in the caution to win and just do whatever you wanted. You had to follow what protocols were. How did you cope, especially for somebody who's so attached to his family and has a such strong sense of responsibility?
I think, yeah, that's a very good question, Nachi. I mean, throughout the world, last 2 years, if you ask the same question, I think you would get varied and multiple answers. But coming to me personally, as you pointed out, I think I enjoyed my job whilst I was working there. So that was a good distraction. I was 9 to 5, or when I was on call, colleagues were there, staff. And of course, I always enjoy with my patients and their families and everything, So that was a huge positive during a very difficult time personally, because at least Monday to Friday you are there, you are doing what you love, what you decided to do. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and so that was quite positive. Initially in 2020, it's just, I don't know if I can give an analogy, like you were in a dark cave that you didn't enter, but someone pushed you inside it. I mean, talking about COVID,
Hmm.
and you are trying to make your way, but you couldn't see any light anywhere, and you're just
Right.
hoping, you're just hoping like one day, I might take the right path, I might see some light one day, all these things
Yeah.
is going to end, it's just a temporary thing. But yeah, unfortunately it dragged on for almost 2 years. So
Hmm.
it was a difficult phase. Like once I finished my job, once I went home, it was an empty apartment, there was not much to do. You could only do too much, so much. Right before the pandemic, I was a bit worried, like if I test positive, what am I going to do? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if I have to quarantine. So I bought a little bit of gym equipment, just to keep myself quite sane and healthy. So
Hmm.
I did those kinds of arrangements, so that was
Right.
quite good. But yeah, it was difficult. And last year, 2020 was okay. People were getting in. There was hope that vaccines
Yeah.
have come out. Like they've identified the vaccines and the Pfizer's and the Moderna's, their effectiveness, and we're thinking like, okay, this was the end of the light. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But
Hmm.
last year, again, it took us 10 steps back in many ways. So I think 2020 was okay, but 2021 last year was pretty tough, because we were going 10 steps back, and slow by slow started losing hope.
Right. Right. It's very interesting to actually, um, mm, hear you say that. I mean, interesting. I mean, not in a sadistic sort of way. I mean, but because normally when people hear physicians talk about COVID, it's around the medical side of it, and okay, this and that, and that kind of virus, that kind of thing, vaccine, and so on. But perhaps this is the first time where somebody is actually getting a glimpse, um, mm, to the side that of the reality that a physician is also, I guess, human, right? I mean, because what you just told us is significant. The sense of the emotional, struggle that one must be going through, and you did find ways, like you said, to sort of engage yourself, but was still a struggle. Now, one thing that sort of kind of intrigues me about this whole thing is that while while you were here trying to occupy yourself and doing the best that you could, and your family, of course, was in England and so on, and did you have moments where you thought that this decision to come here, of course, was a good decision, like you said, and it was also a career decision, right? And so there are two factors here. I mean, people don't realize, but for physicians, um, moving from one place to another is almost like starting from zero. I mean, it's a highly right. I mean, it's a highly career stepwise path. So when you decide to move from somewhere, you're losing everything that you built all along. including your seniority and so on. It's a big decision, not to be taken easy. So that was one major decision you took to come here. But suddenly, through while going through it, you realize that, oh no, there's a big block here that's missing, which of course because of the COVID thing. And then you had to make another decision where all your hard work that you'd established here, and I might add, I mean, with the all credit to you, I mean, established excellent credibility to the extent that everybody talks highly of you. They still do, and they even did while you were here. So I guess the point is that, and then again, so on the surface we see two changes. And someone looking from outside who doesn't know you, doesn't understand, sees here's a practicing psychiatrist, makes one career-changing decision, and then makes another career-changing decision, both of which potentially could have a negative impact on his career, and which they did because he's starting from the beginning. It's just credit goes to you that you were able to build it up. I mean, did you pause and think about it?
I think that's another good question, Nachi. Like, these 2 years, although I did say about the struggles and everything emotionally, missing my family and all those things, but on the positive side, if I look at it, I mean, there are a couple of things that I really did. I mean, as you said earlier, like what helped you cope and everything. I think one of the things is look at. I read quite and watched lots of videos about India's history. I mean, look, all my life, like I never had this time and everything. It was just a rat race, one thing after the other, but never really understood, never really had the time, never really had the inclination. But now, like these 2 years, it's been fantastic. I'm really proud. Of my culture, of my country, of the religious ethos, the way I was brought up. So I think that was a really, really positive. But one of the other biggest positive was missing family and everything. It was sort of I pressed it pressed a reset button, Naji. I don't know whether you understand. Like it reset. It's the fundamentals of life. Like whether it's career, whether it's money,
Yeah,
whether you're
yeah.
unhappy here, you're happy there. You constantly, you're on the move. But last 2 years, it has shown like this reset button. I mean, what is it?
So just to kind of sort of interrupt you there, sorry. When you say reset, do you mean that it kind of sort of made you ask yourself what's important for you and what? Okay.
Exactly. Reset in the sense, what are the priorities? Not just here and now, but in life generally. What is it? What exactly are you looking for? Is it you're running after happiness or you're running away from some things?
Wow.
Where exactly? So 2 years, that was like missing family, missing my good ones back home in UK, and especially my close family, friends. And although I made plenty of good friends in Canada, I mean, don't get me wrong, like it was
Yeah.
fantastic. They never made me feel that I was missing all those things, that void,
Yeah.
they were there. But still, like, there comes a time wherein you need to pause and you need to
Yes.
reflect, like
Yes. Yes.
which way your life is going, how long, like what is it? We have seen, unfortunately, there were so many people, so many families, millions and all over the world, like they lost their near and dear ones. Stories were quite tragic, but fortunately from that point of view, was quite fortunate. Like I didn't have to go through with that kind of grief. So
Yeah.
that makes you realize, like what is it about life, the whole concept of life, the whole concept of existence. The happiness, the notion of happiness. What is happiness? What is being contented mean to you?
So
So
what?
yeah, these were a couple of things, Nachi, that I'm really happy. I'm really proud. Like these were the things, and I think that was one of the fundamental things that made it little bit easy for me, as you mentioned in your question. Like moving to a new country, moving to a new healthcare system. Like you're starting from scratch. A, to understand, B, to get used to the system, and C, like start start doing the best you could. Like, I know you trained in England as well, so the whole system, the whole healthcare system, the psychiatry. It's like Canada is a mix of like maybe European and American kind of healthcare model. So understanding, getting used to it, acclimatizing, and I was quite fortunate. Like, I was able to deliver. So
Yeah,
that
no, you
I'm
did,
really
you
proud
did,
of.
you did. There's something interesting you said that, I mean, I mean, first of all, it's fascinating to sort of hear you say that, because it's almost like, you sort of had sort of intense self therapy. I mean, a self moment of self actualization, looking into things which I don't think that was your style before, and we'll come back in a bit. But you talked about these questions that you were asking yourself in this period, right? I mean, you talked about these deep questions that most of us, when we're busy in work, we don't get a chance to ask ourselves, like, what is happiness? What makes things work for you? And I guess you know what question I'm going to ask you. So, what is happiness for you, Lakshmi?
Happiness is difficult question. To simplify it, is being contented with what you have,
Right,
rather than chasing mirages, rather than creating illusions around you.
right,
You know, enjoying what you have, like your family, your close friends, nourishing them, cherishing them. Last 2 years, that is what has shown. Like, stop taking things for granted.
hmm,
That's another thing, like, because so often than not our life takes to such a mode that you start taking life for granted. It's just like we don't suffer from any illness and everything. So yeah, we will be running around mundane trivial issues, will be bothered by it. But once you are hit with some kind of illness, like say cancer, say something, life threatening illness, then everything else what we were worried about, all these mundane things, become secondary.
hmm,
And then you're dealing with the real issue. So I think this phase, that is what it was. Lots and lots of introspection about you as an individual, about your ideals, your principles, your goals, what you stand for, what you believe in.
right,
I think these 2 years, it gave lots of time. The loneliness that was there,
hmm,
the sitting idle, especially weekends, or if you're having extended holidays and everything, there's so much you can do. But then you sit and you try to introspect. You try to understand the finer things that are so paramount in life, that
right,
we don't
right,
have time to think about it, or we don't want to think about it, because sometimes it becomes a bit difficult and painful for some people.
right. So this level of understanding that I mean, first of all, it's phenomenal. I mean, I guess that's what one does when one meditates and try to understand themselves, and in a strange sort of way. I mean, perhaps this was 2 years worth of meditation for you, but this level of understanding, was it there in the beginning? I mean, is that what you came to Canada with, or this sense of? I mean, anybody who sees you now can see a man at peace with himself. I mean, if you don't mind me saying, I mean, you actually look very relaxed and at peace. You look happy and like you just said, content, right? And on the surface, for somebody who was looking from the outside and didn't know or understand the whys of your decision, I mean, they would think, oh, here's a man who should be the most worried about things, right? He just left here, come here, go there, so on and so forth. So, I mean, were you afraid that there was going to be judgment from friends, people, family? You know how it is, right? Everybody has an opinion.
And is it here or in Canada?
Anywhere. I mean, because I mean, this was. I mean, you were actually you left two continents, right? There were two continent sort of groups of immediate people who got to know you, and were you worried how your actions might be seen? About I want to say actions. I mean, decisions you made, of course, like coming and going and so on and so forth. Like, for example,
No,
leaving your family
absolutely.
behind.
No, 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 no. I mean, I'm a kind of person. I believe, if I do things, if I'm convinced that I have to do it.
Hmm.
I'm not a kind of person who will be easily influenced by, because I don't advise others, I don't judge others, so I expect the same from others. So I'm not that kind of a mold wherein I would sit and think, oh, what are these people thinking, what are those people thinking. I mean, it's never been in part of my nature.
Hmm.
So what I do with conviction. If I believe in, then yes, I'll go ahead with it. Otherwise, even the decision to come to Canada, yes, it's not that someone told me or someone pushed me. It was my decision. I just took
Right.
by it.
Right.
And to be honest, I really enjoyed it. I mean, 2020, as I said, like,
Yeah.
I never had this, like, the issue that we touched upon, like the happiness thing. Even now, like, even in Canada, I was happy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that I was not happy.
Yeah.
I was
No, no,
happy.
yeah.
But the thing is, it's this moral obligation or moral responsibility that I
Right.
felt within
Right.
myself. So
And
it's
I
not
guess
something
that's what I was.
outside.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was trying to figure out. And thank you for using that word, the moral responsibility or obligation, and when how that could very easily have an impact on someone. And but when that happens, it's sort of it's almost in the same territory as guilt, right? So are we looking at a man who felt guilty about himself?
I mean, guilt is a big, big, big word. I mean, like, it's not that I deserted everything and I just sitting like a, staying at home with your family, you talk a bit less. But once you're a bit away, like, WhatsApp every day, whatever it is, I was more connected being away.
Hmm.
I don't know whether it makes sense. Like,
No, it does actually. Yeah. Yeah.
I was there. But the thing is, when children comes into play,
Hmm. Yeah.
it changes the whole dynamic. You have a set of responsibility to your friends, your family members, your wife, and everything. But when children come in, and especially we are psychiatrists, look,
Yeah.
that is our domain. Like, when you're talking about a child like 10, 11, especially boys like
Mhm.
12, 13 plus, things change, for good or bad, things change. Those are the crucial crux moments,
Yeah.
when you need them. And although, I just have a son, he's 14 now, and he was 12 when I left to Canada. So the
Yes.
plan
Yes.
was
Of
like,
course.
he will
Of
come
course.
there, secondary school starts after so and so, he will visit. And that was the original plan. But as I mentioned earlier, that couldn't be the case, and
Yeah.
things completely, turned around. So yeah, it's a sense of obligation, like, as I said, like, as a father,
Hmm.
what was my duty, what was my responsibility towards my son, like, he being there, me being there. Yeah, I'm working. It's not that I'm sad or anything. Yeah, I'm there. But morally, from a moral point of view, moral perspective,
Right. Right.
so far I can easily say, like, I don't think, like, in my even my father, no one has said, like, look, what are you doing? Like, your
Right.
family is there, you are sitting there, and there was that kind of pressure was not there, because they could see, like, I was happy, I was
Yeah.
functioning,
Yeah.
I was doing quite well,
And
even.
your plan was, I mean, if COVID hadn't happened, was, and like you said, I mean, it was one of those things that disrupted so many lives. It's just that
Absolutely.
it's a, I mean, I mean, again, like I said, I mean, somehow we don't get to see the personal sort of side of a physician's personal life, right? So, I mean, that's where I guess the learning is because we're watching this. Um, One of the things that seems to come out from this for me is that the secret, I guess, to maintaining some sort of I don't know, I mean, sense of, I guess, comfort, or I don't want to use the word sanity because it's such a negative connotation attached to it, but some sort of, and again, normalcy is also who's normalcy, but some sort of, semblance of how things used to be, I guess, is a way. I mean, is to maintain that during COVID was what helped you cope. And what would your suggestion be for those of us who are sort of I'm not talking about the physical side of suffering, right? Because that, of course, has been talked about a million times, or even the outwardly, the mental illness side of things, because that's also been talked about. I'm talking about the basic emotional side of things that are happening behind the doors, and how we struggle on our own, right? I mean, this. What would you suggest? How? I mean, you gave a few hints about how you coped, but let's say if somebody was asking, how would you advise them?
I think there is no one size fits all solution for it. Look, we are all different.
Hmm.
Whether you're looking at cultural aspects, whether you're looking at like your religious aspects, or your what you believe in, but the fundamentals are the same. Like, be truthful to yourself. Like, think where you're going. You need to have a little bit of introspection in life. If something is bothering you, if you have near and dear ones, discuss with them. As physicians, we are quite guilty. We don't talk about it because we are supposed to be the warriors or the heroes. Like, I mean, especially last 2 years COVID, like, our healthcare warriors. How do you describe a warrior? Warrior is someone who's not weak. Warrior is someone who's strong. Warrior is someone who's going to conquer through whatever you want to throw at him. That
Hmm.
kind of warriors. But you need to understand that even a warrior is a human being. He's made of
Right.
blood and
Right.
flesh. You will have, like, I think everyone had testing times. We all dealt with things in our own way. But
Yeah.
I will repeat what you told us, Nachi, being our departmental head right from the whole through thing. Like, the theme has been reach out. Reach out, don't shut yourself down. Like, talk to people, reach out, your near and dear ones. And I still remember your analogy. When you said, like, someone has got physical problem, your friend, you got a physical problem and everything. If he's not attending, he's not reading. Yeah, you think like, yeah, he's got a leg pain or something. That's why. But we don't look that kindly when it comes to mental health. We all suffered.
Yeah.
Everyone, we have
Yeah.
suffered. But being close to near and dear one, being honest to yourself, being honest to your near and dear ones, and end of the day, showing a little bit of introspection
Right.
and trying to act on it.
Yes, yes, that's a good point. I mean, trying to act on it, so do something to, I guess, do something. I mean, not
Yeah,
just,
do something that's the what gives you happiness.
yeah.
What's stopping you from pursuing it.
Well, I must thank you for reminding me what I said, because I'd forgotten about. But you're right. I think it's interesting you bring that up, because um, the early days, of course, where there were so many uncertainties, and we were sort of as bad as things were going to get and so on. But what was a bit more intense, I guess, was the uncertainties, right? I mean, the unknowns about what can, what cannot be, or what were the questions. I mean, I forget about the answers. I mean, many times people didn't even know what the questions were, right? And as so that one of the things that and perhaps you can help me a bit here. Uh, from the beginning, I mean, you've seen some of my pathetically non technically, how do I put, sound Instagram short clips. And sometimes these little videos that I used to make and tweet them out and so on. And one of the things that often bothered me was about communicating, right, to
Reach
everybody,
out.
right, to reach out, right, and to look at it from how the person was going through. And when I look back now, I um, and this is something that I tweeted a long time ago at the beginning itself, about this idea how um, the so-called uh, frontline heroes, right? It wasn't, and I use the word so-called because many times we forgot who who else was there, right? I don't think we were talking about the lady who was at the grocery store who was doing the cash. I don't think we talked about the lorry driver, the truck driver who was bringing in produce, or the gas station attendant who was making sure that they were there, or the police who were minding traffic, right? I mean, and so every day, mm, I had a feeling that every day there were heroes being created, and yet there was no acknowledgement in the sense that perhaps we didn't realize. And when I say we, I mean I don't mean myself, because I was aware of that, but as a community, perhaps we didn't realize, and perhaps we still don't. Or, for example, I mean, when those brief moments when the restaurants were, kind of briefly open up in the beginning and so on, and you had uh, a brave service, right? I mean, what when you think about it, and that one thing brought so much anchoring to people's lives, isn't it? Just the ability to, okay, now I can actually. It meant so much to people to be able to go and eat somewhere without realizing that the person who's making it possible and maybe even risking their own health was the person serving us, right?
That's so true, Nachi. I mean, I think, this aspect has been completely overlooked. I think, yeah, healthcare workers and everything they did, but there were so many professions, so many people who have been, even to this day, they're still the unsung heroes, like the chef that you said, the takeaways that you're making, people working at homeless charities. You talk about police, your hairstylists. Everyone was putting their life at risk equally. For some, it was their livelihood. We
Yeah,
can say like, yeah, they didn't have a choice. Survive or perish. Do
yeah,
it. The
yeah.
last worry you would have is, COVID. Having something, bad because of COVID, or starve you and your family. So yeah, there are, like, you talk about your bus drivers. You take away, you take any profession. I think each and every one, they've all been heroes.
Hmm.
Some has been unsung. I think people focus more on the healthcare setting, because I think you will remember 2020,
Hmm.
with lockdown and everything, everyone was sitting at home because, work from home, that caused lots of issues. But, healthcare workers were the only one. And I know, we have the luxury of choices now. Like, you have 6, 7, 8 vaccines, you have finer quality of products, like your N95 mask. You have, like, but if I jot back, like in 2020 when it's hit, I think there were no masks. The
Yeah,
supply was not there.
yeah.
This thing was not there. People were told to just carry on with it. Whatever you wear, carry on with it. So I think, society as a whole, they acknowledge that, that was a difficult time, and we are expecting our healthcare professionals to put their life
Hmm.
at risk because there were no mitigating things to protect them.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that is how the whole notion of, like, our warriors and everyone came in. But later on, once things started getting a bit better, and as you rightly said, like, there were lots and lots of professions, unsung heroes,
Yeah,
that were not duly acknowledged.
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, physician colleagues and nursing colleagues. I mean, huge amount of personal sacrifice. No, no questions about that. No questions about that. And but even the hospital setting. Um, I don't know. Did we pause and talk about uh, the people who were making sure that the place was clean? I mean, wasn't this whole pandemic about cleaning the place a million times? Did we did we say thank you?
I doubt, to be honest. I
Right.
don't think we have thanked the
But
cleaners.
that's the irony of that, isn't it? I mean, this whole thing was about, okay. I mean, it's going to spread to clean wash, this, that, and so on. And the people who are doing it day in and day out. I mean, I don't think they got to make an excuse that they can't do it. I mean,
I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, Nachi. The 2 years that I took, it's introspection. You need to reflect on these kinds of things. And now, once this COVID thing is, waning a bit, and people
mhm,
are quite pleased that, from being a pandemic to it's becoming endemic in most of the countries now is the time for introspection, reflection.
mhm,
Try to think about it, the kind of conversation that we are having, which are like, I'm glad you brought it up. It's an excellent point. Like, did we appreciate, like, who were the cleaners, who were the people, even within the hospital setting, how many unsung heroes is it, was it their role, and what impact their role had on rest of us. I think,
mhm.
I think that is where we have to ponder. We need to take some time out and think about, these kinds of people, these kinds of real life heroes, at least for us when we are in healthcare setting.
No, you're right. You're right. And I think Yeah, I think it's you're right. I mean, this is the time for a bit of introspection and of course, but like you said, I mean, it's not just about uh, finding answers. It's also about acting on them, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, otherwise it's completely futile exercise. You know what you have to do. You know where your happiness lies. You have done your ABCs. Like this is what it causes. This is the antecedent. This is behavior. This is, Once you know it, then you need to have some kind of action phase. Otherwise, it's whole thing is going to be futile exercise.
Yeah. Like for example, I mean, it's I mean, about COVID, I mean, I was continuing. I mean, my practice never shut down for a single day because of COVID and throughout. But on the surface, it looks like okay, well, well done, Nachi. But people don't realize is that it it wasn't because of me that kept going on. I mean, it was because of my admin team, right? Who kept it going. On my own, I can't even sort of transfer a phone call, for heaven's sake. And the ladies who relentlessly made sure that everything was there to make sure that the patients were still being the needs were still met and the clinic still kept going. And so a lot of when we think about it, and like you said, when we do our reflections and about this whole scenario, we end up seeing the two. We end up seeing what's visible as usual, right? And we don't realize that behind everything there's a big team that keeps us going, and just so that it's not visible many times.
Well, absolutely. Look, how many times in life or in practice it happens so often. Like, things are there in front of her, but we don't see
Mhm.
it. We don't see it for whatever reason. We don't see it.
Right.
And then once you think a bit deeper, as you pointed out, like yes, you talked about your secretaries and everything, the admin staff. Yes, at least they provided a little bit of certainty in uncertain times. Like people might have been waiting
Yeah.
for this thing, operations, this thing.
In
If
many ways, this was the only certainty, right? I mean,
Yeah,
when you think about it.
absolutely. At least like, look, sorry, so and so thing is happening. We might have to postpone it. We might have to do this thing, send another letter, answer the queries and everything. I mean, that's if you look at it, yeah, it's their job, but look at how important it was at that point in time.
Mhm.
Some kind of hope, some kind of answers, for the questions that you have. It might be small, trivial questions, but having an answer. Look, can I be seen? Can I be? Oh, this is happening. Can you please pass on the message? Oh,
Right,
what is
right,
happening with this?
right.
If you look at it, not just the admins, our staff, support staff, and
Mhm.
everyone, each and every one, they played a paramount role. And that's what I say. Like everything is there in front of us, but you need to have the will to look at things the way they are and appreciate it.
Right. There's one thing that I thank you for your time, of course, but there's one thing that I was just kind of struck, and I thought I was going to ask you before, and then we got talking about the COVID and all that stuff. So you mentioned that it kind of gave you a chance to figure about India and your culture understanding and so on, and I kind of found that fascinating. What would you mind just to explain that a bit?
I think previously I never had that much. Like I'm a born Hindu and everything, but Hinduism, one of the beautiful things about Hinduism is there are no compulsions. They don't force you to, and even parents and everything, they won't force you to do so and so things. Yeah, we have looked at the Ramayana and Mahabharata. We looked at the television serials and everything for people who haven't read and everything. Yeah, we have a basic knowledge about it, but the in-depth core, the knowledge about the religion, about what it stands for, what are the principles, what you're supposed to do, in under certain situations and everything. And generally, the history of India, like
Mhm.
the Mauryan Empire, the Guptans were there, prior to that. Then the Mughal, this thing, the beautiful architecture that we had, like the trade that we had, and whatnot. Like it's a beautiful culture. It's a beautiful civilization. It's when you said earlier, like when I said, like I'm feel contented, I'm feel happy.
Mhm.
All these things add up. Like you are part
Right,
of something.
right,
You know,
right.
these were the things like, yeah, as Indians, we only talk about the freedom struggle, Mahatma Gandhi, a few individuals and everything we talk about the 18th and 19th century, under the British rule. But there is more to India. There is more, like, 5th century, 6th century. You look at Aryabhatta, you look at the contributions that have been made, like,
Yeah,
Chinese,
yeah.
Egyptians and Indians and Greeks and everything. Like, there is so much. The concept of zero, the
Hmm.
concept of this thing, where even if you look at, like, not many Indians know as well, like, even now, like, if you go to one of the palaces, or in Hyderabad, especially if you go to a fort called Golconda Fort, where the
Hmm.
Nizam, look at the architecture, look at the sound system, look at, like, the ecosystem from one palace to another. Someone is coming, you just clap it. The physics, the way the structures were, the cooling system, the Harappan, Mohenjo-daro and everything, the first civilization,
Right.
there is so much. I mean, which other nationality, which other country, which other civilization can you associate that with? And we don't,
Right. Right.
we have this tendency to complain always more about what is not there about India. Oh, this is not there. Oh, you have mosquitoes. Oh, you have this thing. But, those are all trivial
But that,
issues.
but I mean, but that's what when you look at any sort of, at the risk of sounding a bit politically here, but that's what negativity mostly about. I mean, India is what you see in the media anyway. I mean, for example, the COVID situation, right? I mean, at one point when everybody was talking about how the COVID was going in India, it was the time when I think in India the vaccination was almost going at the rate of one Canada per day, right?
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
mean,
And
and I don't know if those positive things were sort of, I mean, because in these moments, I mean, it's not just about the idea that, I mean, yes, I mean, obviously, I've got an Indian background too, Patna, Bihar, right? So proud Bihari, but so I mean, we some of us knew what was going on was, but it was interesting to see how a lot of toxicity and negativity, not just sort of in political circles, but in general as well, about not understanding that what it is. I mean, recently I mean, in the US, I think I forget who it was, but they saw some sort of where was it? Was it LA or someplace? They saw some dirty train track where the robbery was going, and this so-called intellectual goes and says that, oh, this must be India, and then very quickly had to redact her tweet because he found out that actually it was from LA and not actually India. So a lot of inherent negative bias, I guess, that goes on. But I don't think it stops there. I think it kind of also gets rubbed onto those of us who are from India.
I think, yeah. I mean, I mean, you said, like, as you said, like, you're from Patna, Bihar. I'm from Hyderabad in, Telangana. But, it's this is Western media, the kind of portrayal, whether you watch any Hollywood movie, what kind of, India, when they have to film it in India, or what kind of, there is a narrative, and they don't change that narrative. You look at media as well, like, BBC for that matter. If there is anything negative, that will be front news. I mean, whatever positive is happening, it's not there. And
Yeah,
we as Indians, I think we will be the first to jump the gun and
yeah,
blame
yeah, yeah.
India. But people forget, they forget the present, they forget the past. Like, people
Hmm.
don't, polio at one point in time was causing ravage through, developing countries, especially. India was the country which eradicated polio because it vaccinated so many people that
Yeah,
almost all, since 1978, correct me if I'm wrong,
yeah.
late 70s, early 80s, there hasn't been any polio. And people forget, like, you might be having 15 million, 20 million, 60 million, 70 million. Yeah, you have systems in place, it's
Hmm.
easy. But a country like India, it's complex, it's challenging. Every other 100 kilometers, it's a new place, it's a new city, it's a new language. It's a
And,
gigantic country, and you
and
are
I think
trying
that's what
to
brings
compare, 1.3 plus
to
billion
to
people.
the.
It's a gigantic thing, and people always look at the half empty side of things, but what about the half full?
Yeah.
which country has, like,
Well, in this case, I don't even know if I can say there was a half-empty situation with the COVID thing. I think there was, I mean, the scale at which it was being done, and and the initiatives taken, and the machine was put in place, and how, and plus, I don't think it stopped with India. I think this, a lot of countries in the world, right, when were reaching out, and India was playing a supportive role, of course, and so a lot of that was also happening, and I think uh, I think in the process of all this, like you said, I mean, um, making yourself aware of all that also was helpful.
I mean, absolutely. Look, India had to battle it out all by itself. Look, your Pfizer's and Moderna's and everything. Western countries, they've blocked the whole shipments and everything. They've blocked. So none of the if you look at most of the any other developing country for that matter, why do you think there's so many developing countries where they suffered quite a lot?
Mm.
Although India, by sheer size, the geography, the areas and everything. Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate that so many people got affected and so many people lost lives. But
Yeah,
India had to rely on its own resources to produce its own vaccine to
yeah.
roll it out all across. I mean, even now, like I look at it, like if you look at it, like Arunachal Pradesh, and people have to trek
Hmm.
so many kilometers, just go to the interior, deep interiors, just to vaccinate people. I mean, which country has done that? I mean,
Right,
where do
right.
you get that kind of machinery, that kind of motivation, that kind of? I know there are always going to be skeptics, and you have to appreciate their point of view. But this all this negativity, this narrative, I think it's quite false, and we need to appreciate all the good things that have happened. I mean,
Right.
not
Yeah.
from a political perspective.
No, no, I
It's
understand what you're
we
saying. Yeah,
as Indians, yeah,
I
the
mean, because it
resilience
does
that
make,
we have shown.
yeah. I mean, it does make a difference, right? I mean, you're talking about issues like self-reflection, understanding, and I mean, it would be incomplete, wouldn't it, if that level of um, understanding or shifting through the noise wasn't actually happening in every aspect of your life, right? So, I
Absolutely,
mean,
absolutely.
so I guess that's a part of that journey as well. So, I mean, Lakshmi, it's we've talked for a few minutes, of course, and it's been fascinating, to take a peek inside how the emotional side of the journey was, and I guess it'll also help people understand a bit about, why it's not about right or wrong or good or bad, right? It's about why we make decisions that we do. And on the surface, I mean, what might appear to be this, that, and so on, in reality, it comes across as this: a man who's at peace with himself, and happy and satisfied, and content, and actually managed to self-reflect and find deeper answers. I mean, I don't know if there's a better example of a narrative of a life lived. This was excellent.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. I mean, I couldn't have said no to you, Nachi. It's nice to catch up with you, see you, and have a chat with you, and talk about all these things. Otherwise, it's you need to have some kind of understanding. Someone like you, we all admired me part of in the department as well. Like, you've always, the kind of things that you looked at, where you were 10 steps ahead of, during the whole COVID period. You were able to see 10 steps ahead of things before others could even think about it. And yeah, you've done fantastic. Like, your Instagram videos I have seen, which I think it was a brilliant idea, because the kind of audience that you were trying to engage are one of the most difficult ones to engage with regards to mental health and everything. So yeah, as we discussed, introspection, the kind of paths that we have to take, and if you have the real conviction, then follow the path that you have chosen.
Right, right. No, thank you. And I must also, Lakshmi, thank the viewers on both of our behalfs, and for for being here today and joining Lakshmi and I on this. On that note, have a nice day, Lakshmi, and of course the viewers as well. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much. My
much.
pleasure.